was one of those days that felt too normal. The sky over Los Angeles was a soft gray, hanging low like a quiet warning. Keanu Reeves walked slowly through the glass doors of the corporate headquarters, wearing a worn-out brown jacket, faded, jeans and scuffed shoes. He looked nothing like a movie star. In fact, no one even noticed him, and that was exactly how he wanted it. For the past few months, Keanu had been volunteering his time under a false name, just K on the paperwork, offering help with design innovation at a mid-level engineering firm. It wasn't about fame or a paycheck. He had invested silently in the company because he believed in its potential. Now he wanted to learn from the ground up, see how people treated each other when no cameras were around. But what he didn't expect was the coldness, the ego, especially from one man, Lucas Rhodes, the lead engineer. Lucas had joined the firm 2 years ago and quickly built a reputation for being brilliant and brutal. He mocked junior staff for small mistakes, spoke over women during meetings, and treated the janitor like he was invisible. To Lucas, respect was something you demanded, not earned, and today he had a new target. Keanu. Lucas didn't know who he was, only that K was some older guy from a consulting program trying to understand the technical process. In Lucas's eyes, Keanu looked like a janitor who had wandered into a boardroom by mistake. As the morning meeting started, Keanu took a seat quietly in the back. His notebook was filled with ideas, design changes that could reduce material waste, improve safety, and save the company millions. But when he gently raised his hand to speak, Lucas smirked. "You have something to say, Kay?" Lucas said loudly, drawing attention from the team. Keanu nodded calmly. "Just a small idea about the pressure valve placement on the Nova unit. I noticed it might cause overheating if..." Lucas cut him off, chuckling. "Oh wow. Overheating? From the guy who couldn't even find the coffee machine last week?" Some people laughed nervously. Others looked down. No one stopped him. Keanu's face didn't change. He gave a slight smile. "I just think it could be important." Lucas walked over and snatched the notebook from Keanu's hand. He held it up for everyone to see. "Let's take a look at these brilliant ideas," he mocked. "Huh? Oh wow, look at that." He used crayons. Keanu had used color-coded pencils to map temperature gradients. Lucas tore out a page and held it like it was a joke. The room stayed silent. "Listen," Lucas continued, pacing like a performer. "This is an engineering company, not a kindergarten. We don't take advice from people who can't even hold a wrench properly." Keanu stood still, not blinking. "I understand," he said simply. "Thank you for listening anyway." Lucas scoffed. "Go back to cleaning the storage room or whatever it is you actually do." The meeting continued without him. Keanu quietly picked up his torn notebook and walked out. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Keanu stayed behind in the lab. The floor was quiet, lights dimmed. He wasn't angry. He just needed to clear his mind. He opened his notebook and started drawing again, making careful calculations on a new valve structure. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He just loved solving problems. It was how his mind worked. What he didn't know was that someone had been watching. Emily, one of the interns who had been quietly cleaning up behind a workbench. She had seen the whole incident earlier that day, and it had made her stomach twist. "That was really unfair," she said softly. Keanu looked up, surprised. "Thank you, but it's okay." "No, it's not," Emily said, stepping closer. "You were just trying to help. Your notes, they weren't wrong. I actually think you're on to something." He smiled gently. "You like engineering?" "I love it," she said, eyes shining. "But no one really listens to me either. Lucas says I'm too green." "Then maybe we build something," Keanu said. They spent the next 3 hours working quietly side by side. Keanu explained things patiently, letting Emily experiment. For the first time since joining the company, she felt like she mattered. As they wrapped up, Keanu handed her the final sketch. "This is yours now," he said. "You finished it. But it's okay. Just keep building." The next morning, Lucas was showing off a new prototype in the main hall. Executives had flown in from New York, Cameras were being set up for a live stream announcement. It was a big deal, his moment to shine. But something was wrong. As the machine started its test cycle, the control panel blinked red. The overheating. Alarm went off, then smoke. Lucas froze. "What the? Shut it down! Shut it down!" An engineer sprinted over, pulling the safety switch. The prototype collapsed into a useless hunk of steaming metal. Gasps filled the room. The board members looked furious. "How could this happen?" the CEO demanded. Before Lucas could answer, one of the assistant engineers, Maria, stepped forward. "Sir," she said, "we reviewed this design yesterday. Kay actually warned us about the overheating risk." "Who?" the CEO asked. "Kay," Maria pointed. "He's been helping us for weeks. That guy there." Everyone turned. Keanu was standing quietly near the back wall, notebook in hand. Lucas laughed nervously. "Are you serious? He's just some guy from a volunteer program." The CEO narrowed his eyes. "You mean the man who's been anonymously funding our sustainability initiative?" he asked slowly. Lucas blinked. "What?" The CEO nodded toward Keanu. "That's KeanuReeves." Silence fell like a stone. Lucas stammered. "The actor?" "Not just an actor," the CEO said. "He's also an inventor, philanthropist, and one of our major investors. He came here to learn from the ground level, to help." The board members all turned to Keanu. A few stood up. "We're so sorry, Mr. Reeves." Keanu shook his head, gently. "Please don't apologize, I'm just Kay. Emily helped me fix the valve design. She deserves the credit." Lucas turned pale. "We need to talk," the CEO said to him coldly. "In my office. Now." Lucas tried to speak but was cut off by a security officer who gestured toward the door. He was being removed. Fired. Right there in front of everyone. As he walked past Keanu, he couldn't look him in the eyes. Keanu turned to Emily and smiled. "Want to lead the next design meeting with me?" She nodded, tears in her eyes. And just like that, the room that once ignored him now stood in silent awe. Not of the fame, but of the man who never raised his voice. Never sought revenge, only respect. The room had gone completely still after Lucas was escorted out. Even the whir of machines in the background seemed quieter, like the building itself was holding its breath. No one had expected that moment. Not the staff, not the executives, and certainly not Lucas. Keanu didn't bask in the silence. He just looked around calmly, his notebook still in hand. He could feel the shift in the air. Respect replacing mockery, curiosity replacing dismissal. But that wasn't why he was here. He walked over to Emily and handed her a printed copy of the improved valve sketch. "You explain it," he said softly. "You deserve the spotlight." Her hands trembled as she took it. I don't know if I can," she whispered. "Yes, you can," he said. "They need to hear from someone who believes in the work, not just the glory." The board members sat back down, the CEO nodded, and all eyes turned to the front of the room. Emily stood there, shaking, papers in her hand. Keanu stood quietly beside her, his presence calm and reassuring like a lighthouse in the storm. She cleared her throat. "The overheating happened because the pressure valve was placed too close to the heat intake," she began. "We worked on a redesign that reroutes the coolant, spreads the pressure more evenly, and lowers the internal temperature by over 20%. As she spoke, the slide deck Keanu had prepared began to auto-advance on the screen behind them. Visuals showed color-coded designs, temperature comparisons, and 3D mock-ups of the adjusted structure. By the time she finished, the room had erupted into applause. Emily stepped back, breathless. The CEO rose to his feet. "This is the kind of work that brings real value to what we do. Humility, teamwork, precision, and innovation." He looked at Keanu. "Thank you for reminding us what leadership really looks like." Keanu nodded. "I think Emily should lead the Nova redesign team." She looked at him stunned. "You've got the heart for it," he said. "And the brain." A few of the board members murmured agreement. One of them, a woman named Dr. Lee Morris, who oversaw innovation partnerships, stepped forward and offered Emily her card. "I'd like to mentor you personally," she said. Tears welled up in Emily's eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. After the meeting, Keanu stepped out onto the rooftop balcony. The sky had opened slightly, letting a few golden rays through the clouds. He leaned on the railing, letting the breeze hit his face. He thought about everything, about how easy it had been for Lucas to dismiss him, how quickly others had laughed, and how close Emily had been to staying silent forever. Funny, isn't it? He muttered to himself. How much we miss just because someone doesn't look the part. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. You really don't like being treated like a star, do you? It was Dr. Lee Morris. She stood beside him, sipping tea. Never did, Keanu said. I like building things, seeing people shine. Then you should see the emails, she smiled. News of what happened in that meeting just hit the upper floors. Investors are impressed. Some want to meet the man behind the notebook. Keanu chuckled. Can I send Emily instead? Lee smiled. You could, but they'd still want to meet the guy who saw through the noise. He turned to her. Why did you stay silent during the meeting when Lucas mocked me? Her smile faded. I wanted to speak up, she said, but I've done that before, and every time someone found a way to make me small again, it gets tiring. He nodded slowly. It does. But today, you didn't fight with words. You just stayed. Still. Quiet strength. I forgot that could be powerful too. Keanu looked out over the city again. Maybe now more people will remember. The following week, Emily took charge of her new team. She was still nervous, still soft-spoken, but there was a light in her now, a spark that wouldn't go out. She and Keanu spent hours refining the Nova redesign. They brought in juniors, interns, and even janitors to give feedback. No voice was too small. Ideas flowed like never before, but not everyone was happy. In the shadows of the building's operations division, a man named Stephen Hart watched it all unfold. Stephen was older than Lucas, just as arrogant and even more cunning. He had been with the company for 18 years and believed he deserved to be CEO. Lucas had been his pawn. With Lucas gone, Stephen saw his plans unraveling, and he was furious. He began whispering behind closed doors, pulling strings, spreading rumors. You know, he told another senior engineer, this Nova redesign? It's reckless. It's being run by a girl who was cleaning cables a month ago and an actor pretending to be an engineer. He stirred doubt, especially among those who feared change, and it started to work. Some staff began missing meetings. Others became passive-aggressive. The once welcoming office grew colder, as if poisoned by unseen smoke. Emily felt it. Keanu felt it too. One afternoon, she found him sitting alone in the lab, staring at a pile of notes. They're turning on us, she said softly. He looked up. Then we turn the lights on brighter. What if they shut us down? Then we build outside. They say we don't belong here. Keanu smiled. Good. Then we're probably in the right place. Emily smiled back, but deep inside, fear was rising. The real turning point came 2 days later. Emily was presenting an updated design to a visiting investor when the lights flickered. The screen glitched. And then, all data from their shared folder vanished. Panic spread. Did we get hacked? Someone shouted. A security officer ran in, followed by IT staff. The logs showed that someone from inside the company had manually deleted the files at 6:12 a.m. That person? Emily, at least that's what the system claimed. The room spun. It's not me, she whispered. I didn't do it. The CEO was called in. Dr. Lee Morris arrived minutes later. Confusion, whispers, suspicion. It all swirled like a storm. Stephen watched quietly from the corner of the room, pretending to be shocked. Emily stood frozen until Keanu stepped forward. Check the cameras, he said calmly. The IT head hesitated. They're usually off in the morning, but we can try. After 10 minutes of digging, they found something. A blurry image of someone at Emily's desk. Tall, older, not Emily. Someone had used her terminal to frame her. Keanu studied the footage. Pause, he said. He walked up and pointed to a faint, Reflection on a glass cabinet. Zoom in here. It was Stephen. The room exploded with noise. Stephen's face went red. "This is outrageous," he shouted. "You're going to trust a movie star over one of your own?" The CEO turned slowly to him. "You tried to sabotage one of our most important projects," he said. "You tried to ruin someone's career." Stephen started backing away, but security was already behind him. As he was escorted out, he glared at Keanu. "You don't belong here," he hissed. Keanu looked him straight in the eyes. "Neither do bullies." The doors closed behind Stephen, and this time no one stayed silent. Applause filled the room. Emily collapsed into her seat, shaking. "You saved me again?" she said. "No," Keanu replied gently. "You saved yourself. I just stood beside you." The storm had passed, but the damage was still fresh. After Stephen was removed from the company, there was a long silence across the engineering floor. It wasn't the silence of peace. It was the kind that comes after a loud crash when everyone is too stunned to speak. Emily sat at her desk staring at her monitor. Her hands were still trembling from the fear of almost losing everything. The betrayal, the public humiliation, the pressure, all of it weighed on her chest like a stone. She had done nothing wrong, yet someone had tried to end her career just to protect their ego. Keanu walked over quietly and set down 2 mugs of tea. He didn't say anything. He just sat beside her, patient and still, like a friend who knew the value of silence. Finally, she whispered, "Do you ever get tired of this? The fighting? The judgment?" He looked out the window, then answered, "Sometimes, but then I remember who I'm fighting for." She looked at him. "You fought for me," she said. "I fought with you," he corrected gently. "And now you fight for the next person." Over the next few days, something changed in the company. People started talking again, but not behind closed doors. This time it was real conversations, honest, open, even vulnerable. Junior staff began sharing ideas. The cleaning staff was included in safety meetings. Workers from the warehouse were asked how to improve shipment designs. Emily had unknowingly started a quiet revolution, and Keanu had simply shown everyone it was okay to care. The Nova project, once mocked and doubted, became the new flagship development. Keanu, still dressed in his simple brown jacket, refused to take any formal title. Instead, he acted as a guide, pointing people toward their own strengths. Emily was named lead engineer of the Nova team. She didn't have a fancy degree from an Ivy League school, but she had something more rare: humility, insight, and grit. As word of the company's transformation spread, other firms took notice. News outlets wanted interviews. Magazines called her the new face of engineering. But not everyone welcomed the change. Behind the scenes, another storm was brewing. Marcus Delroy, vice president of external partnerships, had kept a low profile through the Lucas and Stephen incidents. He was smooth, polished, always smiling, but deep down he cared more about public image than people. He had spent years cultivating government contracts, corporate sponsors, and stockholders. To him, Nova was a risky move, too much emotion, too little tradition, and the fact that it was now being led by an intern turned engineer and an actor? Unacceptable. During a board dinner, Marcus leaned toward one of the shareholders. "Don't you think it's dangerous?" he whispered. "Tying our brand to an unpredictable figure like Keanu? What if he says something wrong? What if this girl fails under pressure?" The shareholder hesitated. "But Nova's working. The numbers are up." Marcus smiled coldly. "For now, but if it crashes, we all go down with it." He was planting seeds of doubt again. Quiet, patient, poisonous, and he had a plan. 1 week later, the company received a sudden visit from an international investor group. They arrived without warning, 7 men in sharp suits, briefcases in hand, accents polished and cold. They wanted to audit the Nova team. Standard protocol, they said, but everyone felt it wasn't. Emily stood frozen when they entered the lab. Keanu stood beside her, calm as always. "We'll answer everything," he whispered. For the next 6 hours, the team was grilled with questions. Why had an intern been promoted? Why were safety protocols modified? Why was an actor involved in structural design? Emily answered honestly, explaining the process, the teamwork, and the results. Keanu supported her with notes, diagrams, and real-world comparisons. He never raised his voice. He never defended himself. He only told the truth. But the investors remained cold. At the end, one of them, Mr. Romanoff, stood up. "This operation is too unorthodox," he said. "We recommend the immediate replacement of current project leadership, including Mr. Reeves." Gasps echoed across the room. "You can't be serious," Emily said. "We are protecting our investment," he replied. "This is business, not a charity." Keanu stepped forward. "Then take your money," he said quietly. "We'll build Nova without it." The room went silent. Romanoff laughed. "You think you can run this without funding?" Keanu smiled. "Watch us." That night, a company-wide meeting was called. Every floor, every team, gathered in the main auditorium. Tension hung heavy in the air. Some were scared, others angry, but all were watching Keanu. He stepped onto the stage with Emily at his side. "You've all heard the rumors," he began, "that Nova might be shut down, that I might step away, but here's the truth." He paused. "I never came here to run anything. I came to serve. I didn't want power. I wanted purpose. And I saw it in every one of you." His voice was low, steady. "You are the reason this company is changing. Not me. Not Emily. All of you. And if someone wants to stop us, we don't quit. We build harder. Together." Emily stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "They said I was too young, too unqualified, too small. But I am not the only one. How many of you have been told you weren't enough?" Slowly, hands began to rise. Dozens of them. Keanu looked at the sea of raised hands. "Then let's show them what enough really looks like." The applause that followed shook the room. The next morning, something incredible happened. The company's social media exploded with posts, stories from staff, videos of meetings, photos of the Nova team building models by hand. The world took notice. Celebrities reposted. Engineers from across the globe sent support. Investors, new ones, reached out, offering clean funding with no control strings attached. And then, one unexpected message arrived from NASA. "We've reviewed your valve redesign," it read. "It matches improvements we've been testing. For high-pressure systems, we would like to explore a partnership." Emily's jaw dropped when she read it. "NASA?" she whispered. Keanu smiled. "Seems like someone was watching." But just when it looked like things were finally stable, a phone call shattered everything. It was from a nurse. "Mr. Reeves," the voice said, "we found something on your recent scans. We need to talk." Keanu closed his eyes. He knew that voice, that tone. It was the sound of another storm. The soft hum of the hospital hallway echoed in Keanu's ears as he sat alone, staring at the floor. Everything felt distant. The nurses, the clicking heels, the murmured conversations. It was as if the walls were made of fog and he was floating somewhere in the middle of it. The doctor had just walked out. He hadn't sugarcoated anything. "It's early-stage lymphoma," the doctor had said gently. "We caught it soon, but you'll need treatment, chemo, rest, time away from stress." Keanu had nodded without speaking. It wasn't the word cancer that scared him. It was the thought of disappearing again. Not for a role, not for peace, but because his body might fail. And worse, the Nova team still needed him. Emily still needed him. How could he walk away now? He pulled out his phone and stared at Emily's name on the screen. His thumb hovered over the call button. Then he put the phone back into his pocket. She had come too far to be burdened with this. Not yet. Back at the company, Emily was preparing for the biggest presentation of her life. The Nova redesign had not only caught NASA's attention, it had earned a spot at the upcoming Global Engineering Summit. A chance to show the world what they had built. A chance to prove that brilliance wasn't always dressed in suits and degrees. But Keanu hadn't shown up to work in 3 days. He hadn't answered texts. She tried calling again. Voicemail. Her stomach twisted with worry. "Do you think he's okay?" she asked Dr. Lee Morris. Lee looked concerned. "Maybe he just needs rest." Emily shook her head. "This isn't like him. Something's wrong." But there was no time to pause. The summit was in 48 hours. Keanu sat on the balcony of his small apartment watching the sun sink behind the hills. He had always found comfort in sunsets, the way they ended without apology, without fear. Maybe that's what he needed now. Just to accept. But a soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. When he opened it, Emily stood there, her eyes filled with worry. "You're sick," she said quietly. He sighed. "Who told you?" "No one. I felt it." He looked away, ashamed. "You were there for all of us, Keanu," she said. "You never asked for anything, but now you need us." His voice cracked slightly. "I didn't want to be a burden." She stepped closer. "You're not a burden. You're the foundation." He finally looked into her eyes, and for the first time in weeks he let the tears fall. The next day, Emily stood on the stage of the Global Engineering Summit, facing hundreds of the world's top innovators, thinkers, and scientists. Her heart pounded, but she didn't shake. She began her speech with a photo, Keanu in his brown jacket standing beside the Nova prototype. "This is the man who taught me how to believe in my voice," she said. Not because of who he was, but because of what he saw in others. She walked the audience through the Nova redesign. The cooling system, the energy-saving features, the real-world impact. She told the story of the cleaning staff who suggested a better circuit layout, of the warehouse driver who noticed a weight imbalance, of the team that listened, not just led. And when she finished, the applause didn't just echo. It roared. Media flooded her after the event. Cameras, questions, handshakes, but her eyes searched for just one thing. A message from Keanu. It came a few hours later. A single photo. Him in a hospital chair, hooked to an IV, and a thumbs up. Beneath it, "You made the whole world listen, proud of you." She burst into tears on the spot. Meanwhile, back at the company, Marcus Delroy wasn't giving up. He had seen the summit speech, the media attention, the rising numbers. But instead of celebrating, he felt cornered, threatened. The more successful Nova became, the more it proved that his old-school ways were fading. So he did what people like him always do. He doubled down. He called a private meeting with select shareholders and proposed a stabilization plan. "We remove emotional elements from leadership," he said. "We restructure, protect the brand image." "You mean fire Emily?" one board member asked. "Replace her," Marcus said smoothly, "before she gets overwhelmed. She's already working with a sick consultant and a team of unqualified staff." But the board was divided. Some liked the new path. Others feared the unpredictability. And Marcus? He had one last card, a forged report. He slid it onto the table. "There's been an incident with the Nova cooling system," he lied. "An error, high risk. If we let this hit the market, we could face lawsuits." The board gasped. He leaned back, smiling. The trap was set. When Emily returned to the company 2 days later, she was handed a formal notice. "Pending investigation, you are suspended from project leadership," it read. She froze in place, heart racing. "What investigation?" she asked. "A safety breach," replied one of the assistants. "Something in the Nova cooling unit." "There's no breach," she said. "We tested it 100 times. But it didn't matter. She was locked out of the system. Meetings went on without her. Her team was scattered. And worst of all, Keanu hadn't replied to her last message in over 24 hours. She felt it again, that old feeling. Being small, being silenced. But something inside her said, "Not this time." She grabbed her notes, printed every diagram, and took a cab straight to the hospital. When Keanu opened his eyes, she was standing there with the entire Nova binder. "They're lying," she said, "and I need you to help me prove it." He smiled weakly. Then let's get to work. They sat, together in the hospital room surrounded by charts, sketches, and reports. Keanu's body was weak, but his mind was sharp. He pointed to a specific section of the forged document. "This data doesn't even match the test environment," he said. "And look at this timestamp. It's from before we updated the design." "So, we prove it's fake?" she asked. "We don't just prove it," he said. "We show the truth. Live." "How?" he grinned. "I think the world's ready for a live demo." 3 days later, an anonymous countdown appeared on the company's internal network. "Watch the truth about Nova. Live in 24 hours. Now, spread like wildfire. Everyone was talking. Shareholders, engineers, even media outlets got wind of it. Marcus panicked. He tried to shut down the stream, but it had already been mirrored. He tried to block access, but the board overruled him. And, when the countdown hit 0, the screen lit up, a live stream of Keanu Reeves in a hospital gown, sitting beside Emily in a borrowed conference room. "Hello, everyone," he said softly. "This is not about me. It's about truth, about dignity, about what happens when people care more about control than progress." They showed the real test footage, side by side with Marcus's forged report. They walked viewers through the timeline, the changes, the sabotage. They showed proof, and then they showed Nova, working, glowing, stable. The same machine Marcus had claimed was broken. The stream ended with Emily saying just 5 words: "We are not going anywhere." Within hours, Marcus Delroy was called to the boardroom. This time, he didn't come back out. Keanu received hundreds of messages that night, from engineers, scientists, students, even his old directors from Hollywood. But one message stood out most, from Emily. "You told me once that quiet strength changes the world. Today, you made it loud. And it worked." He smiled, leaned back in his hospital chair, and whispered, "This is only the beginning." The sun peeked through the blinds of the hospital room, painting soft golden lines across the floor. Keanu sat by the window, thinner now, paler, but more at peace than he had been in weeks. A small TV played quietly in the corner, and on it was the replay of the live stream that had taken the engineering world by storm. He watched as Emily explained the Nova cooling system again, watched as she stood tall and unshaken, and watched as the world finally saw what honesty looked like when given a voice. A soft knock came at the door. It was Dr. Lee Morris, holding a warm drink and a gentle smile. "Your scan results came back," she said, sitting beside him. "How bad is it?" he asked. "It's not bad," she replied. "You're responding to treatment. The tumors are shrinking, slowly, but clearly." Keanu exhaled, eyes watering. "That's good," he whispered, "because I think we still have work to do." The atmosphere at the company headquarters had completely changed. The walls felt brighter, the people warmer. Staff who once kept their heads down now greeted each other with open respect. Ideas bounced freely across departments. Junior engineers collaborated with senior teams, and the Nova project, it had become the company's pride. Emily, now officially reinstated, was asked to speak at multiple universities and tech forums, not just for her intelligence, but for her courage. But she never let the spotlight steal her humility. She always credited the team, always mentioned Keanu's name, always reminded people that strength is sometimes quiet and wrapped in kindness. Still, not all hearts were changed. There was one more name that had been quietly circling behind the scenes: Elaine Frost. Elaine was the newly appointed Chief Risk Officer. She had replaced Marcus Delroy, but her methods were colder, more calculated. While she didn't lie or sabotage like Marcus, she didn't trust emotions in leadership. To her, emotions were liabilities. And now, her attention was on Keanu. "We can't build a brand around someone who could disappear at any moment," she said in a private meeting. "His health is uncertain. The public attachment to him makes us vulnerable." The board members were quiet. One finally spoke. "But he doesn't hold a title." Elaine nodded. Which means he can be removed without official process. We simply fade him out. They agreed silently. A slow removal plan was set in motion. 2 weeks later, Keanu returned to the company for the first time since treatment began. People clapped when he walked through the door. They hugged him, offered him food, wrote notes of support. But when he tried to log into the Nova files, his access was denied. He raised an eyebrow, then went to the IT desk. The technician looked confused, typed a few things, and then leaned in. Your credentials were archived, the tech said. Last night, Keanu smiled faintly. That's strange. He didn't react with anger. Instead, he walked directly to Emily's office. She looked up from her desk and knew immediately. They're pushing you out, she said, voice low. Looks like it, he replied. No, we're not letting them do this. I'll go to the board. He gently held up his hand. Wait, he said, let's give it a moment. Why? He sat down across from her. Because sometimes people need to reveal their full hand. And this isn't about me. It's about what we built. If they think Nova is about one person, they never understood it in the first place. She frowned. But they'll erase your contribution? Let them try, he said softly. Truth always finds its way back. Elaine Frost, confident that her strategy was working, began introducing a new face to the Nova project. A man named Colin Sharp, a high-level consultant known for cutting costs and tightening control. He was smooth, confident, and sharp-tongued. Within days, he was adjusting project timelines, rewriting protocols, and questioning every past decision. Emily, you're too close to the original design, Colin said in a meeting. We need someone with a little more distance. She stared at him. Meaning what? Meaning we'll have you work under my technical team for now. The air in the room tightened. Emily looked around. No one spoke, except one voice. You? Can't silence the very person who made Nova possible. It was Dr. Lee Morris standing at the back of the room. Colin raised an eyebrow. Dr. Morris, with respect. No, she interrupted. No more of that. I've been silent too long. I watched Lucas mock people. I watched Stephen try to destroy careers. I watched Marcus twist the truth. And now I see you doing it with a smile and a signature. Elaine, watching from the glass window outside, turned and walked away, but not before seeing the heads in the meeting slowly nod toward Lee's words. That night, Emily met with Keanu at a quiet rooftop lounge overlooking the city. They both sipped tea surrounded by soft winds and city lights. They'll push you out of the building, she said. Maybe, he replied, but they can't push me out of people's hearts, and they can't rewrite the truth. You deserve more than this. He smiled. I didn't come here for titles or trophies. I came to see if the world was still capable of kindness, and I think it is. She went quiet for a long time. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. What's this? He asked. A letter of nomination, she said, for the International Resilience Award. I submitted it under your real name. They want to honor you this fall. His eyes filled with tears. Emily, you always honored others. Now it's your turn. He held the letter carefully, like it was made of glass. Then he looked out over the city again. You know, they can take my badge. They can lock me out of buildings, but they'll never lock me out of the hearts we changed. No, she said, they won't. And somewhere deep in the night, the stars above the city shimmered just a little brighter. The next morning, everything changed again. A package arrived at headquarters addressed to the board. Inside was a thick folder with official government seals. It was from NASA. Inside was a formal proposal for a multi-year joint venture, with Nova as the central technology, and in the letter, it said clearly, this project caught our attention not because of its structure, but because of the people, especially Mr. Keanu Reeves, whose input and collaboration we now consider essential moving forward. The board stared at the letter in stunned silence. Elaine Frost sat at the far end, her face unreadable. The CEO stood up. Restore his access. Now, Keanu was at the hospital for a checkup when he got the call. "You've been reinstated," Emily said, smiling through the phone. "They had no choice. NASA wants you in. We all do." He paused. "I think we just won," he whispered. "No," she said softly. "We just began." As the elevator doors opened the next day and Keanu stepped out onto the main floor, the entire company was waiting. A long line of people, interns, janitors, engineers, executives. They clapped, but not just for him, for Emily, for Lee, for every name that had once been overlooked. No confetti, no fireworks, just raw, real, unshakable gratitude. And in the center of it all, Keanu smiled, quiet, humble, and strong, because this story was no longer about a man being humiliated. It was about a world waking up. The building stood tall, glass gleaming under a wide, morning sky. But something was different now. Not just the way people walked or the way meetings ran, but the way people looked at each other. There was more eye contact, more thank yous, more listening. It wasn't just a company anymore. It had become a reflection of everything they had been through together. Keanu Reeves stood in front of the Nova unit, now upgraded, perfected, and stamped with NASA's seal of approval. The final prototype was scheduled to be shipped for testing in just 2 days. The media buzzed about it. International agencies were calling. Even schools were requesting virtual tours to inspire the next generation. And yet he didn't smile for the fame. He smiled because it all began with a broken valve, a torn notebook, and someone who chose not to stay silent. Emily stood beside him, clipboard in hand, dressed in her lab coat, confident, steady. No longer the girl who doubted her own worth. Now she was leading a global project, and people followed her not because of her title, but because they believed in her heart. Keanu turned to her. "You ready for the demo?" he asked. She smiled. More than ready, but before they could begin, a voice called out from across the floor. It was the CEO holding a small black box. "Before we begin," he said, "there's something we want to give you." He handed the box to Keanu, who opened it slowly. Inside was a silver pin in the shape of a gear. Engraved on it were the words, "Humility, Strength, Legacy." "We don't usually make new positions," the CEO said, "but today we're making one. This pin represents the founding mentor of Nova, someone who gave us more than ideas, someone who gave us a reason to care again." The room clapped. Some wiped their eyes. Keanu looked around the room, then gently removed the pin from the box. Instead of placing it on his own jacket, he walked over to Emily and pinned it on her. The room fell silent. "You earned this," he said. "But it has your name," she whispered. "And you carry it forward." The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was deep, genuine. Felt. Months passed. Nova was launched officially in partnership with NASA and several clean energy initiatives. Its cooling system became the standard for multiple high-efficiency engines, saving thousands of tons of waste across industries. Schools started teaching about it. Startups adopted its model of inclusive design. And Emily, she became the youngest, recipient of the World Science Ethics Award. On the night of the ceremony, she stood in front of a crowd of thousands. "I'm not here because I'm the smartest," she said. "I'm here because someone believed in my voice when I didn't. Someone who walked into a room where no one saw him and changed it just by being kind." She paused. We often think strength is about being loud, but real strength is how gently you lift others. She received a standing ovation. Keanu watched from the crowd, still in his brown jacket, still smiling. Back at the company, a new tradition had started. Once a month, a small gathering was held called Open Hands. Anyone could speak. Interns, security, cafeteria workers. No slides, no suits, just people sharing ideas. The first time a janitor stood up and proposed a safety change, everyone clapped. That change was implemented within 2 days, and every single session ended the same way, with a quote from Keanu printed on the wall behind the room. "Every voice is an instrument, If we only listen to the loudest, we miss the symphony. 1 year later, Keanu sat with Emily on a bench just outside the building. Birds flew low over the city skyline, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. His health had stabilized. The treatments had worked. He looked healthier, stronger. But the lines on his face told a deeper story. One of patience, of struggle, of quiet resilience. Emily handed him a folder. Inside was a blueprint. "It's called Nova 2, she said. "Cleaner, lighter, smarter." He looked at the design, then at her. "Ready to build it?" She nodded. "This time I'll be your mentor." He laughed. Then he leaned back, looked at the sky and said, "It all started because someone thought—" "I didn't belong," she replied, "and now they know. You were the missing piece." Years from now, Nova would be remembered not just as an engineering marvel, but as a symbol. Students would study it not just for its design, but for the story behind it. Companies would try to copy the tech but never quite capture the spirit, because that spirit wasn't in the metal. It was in the people. The overlooked intern, the kind actor, the broken systems mended by kindness, and the simple truth that sometimes the person you ignore is the one who will change everything.